Kenny, please call the roll.
Bernsketter,
Here.
Searfoy, Beck, Black, Bratton, Huff, Razer.
We have a quorum. I want to move into executive session. Do I have a second? I have a second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. We're in executive session. I want to exec on Senate Bill 1253. This is Senator Rehder's bill. This act allows the Commissioner of Administration to reserve certain contract provisions for negotiation after the award of the contract to the lowest bidder. And I move that Senate Bill 1253 be brought before the committee. Do I have a second? I do. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. It is before the committee. Is there any discussion on this bill? Hearing none, seeing none, I move that Senate Bill 1253 be voted out of committee. Do pass. Do I have a second? I have a second. Kenny, please call the roll to vote Senate Bill 1253 out of committee. Do pass.
Bernsketter,
Aye.
Searfoy, Beck, Black, Bratton, Huff, Razer. 5-0.
By your vote of 5-0, the motion carries. I move that we adjourn. Do I have a second? Adjourn executive session. I'm sorry. Adjourn executive session. I'm glad you all thought that was funny. I have a second. All those in favor say aye. We are adjourned. Okay, now for back to our regular session. We want to hear Senate Bill 787. Senator Rehder, whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For what may be my final time, I am Senator Greg Razer for the 7th District in Jackson County, here to present Senate Bill 787, better known as MONA. This is kind of short and sweet. This is if I'm not mistaken, the 25th consecutive year that this bill has been introduced in this building by somebody for a bill to add sexual orientation and gender identity to the state's human rights statute, which protects in housing, employment, and public accommodations. All it says is you can't look somebody in the eye and say you're fired because you're gay. You're not getting this apartment because you're a lesbian. You can't sit at this lunch counter because you two men are married. Doesn't say you have to like us, doesn't say we have to get the apartment. Doesn't say you can't fire us or not hire us. It says this can't be the reason. Today in Missouri, you can look me in the eye and evict me from an apartment because I'm here introducing this bill because of who I am. That's the law of the land in Missouri. The Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, ruled on an issue 2 or 3 years ago. And this was part of the argument that because for 20 plus years we haven't passed this bill, the General Assembly has said explicitly that we want this to be the way the law exists. I think we're better than that. I think it's 2024. We can be better than that. I think, quite frankly, Governor Parson has voted for this as a member of the Senate. It did not hurt his election chances statewide. Y'all know what this bill is, so I'll just leave it with that and answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Any committee members have any questions? Seeing none. We're going to go back and forth with testimony. If we have the room till 9:30. I don't want to stop anybody from testifying, but please keep your testimony brief, and we'll start with somebody in favor first, and then we'll go against and just kind of keep going back and forth. So first person in favor, please come forward to testify.
Good morning, Senator Bernskoetter and committee. Thank you for allowing me to be here today, and I appear before you to strongly oppose Senate Bill 787. This bill is
So
unacceptable.
I just said somebody in favor, please come forward.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We can start in the opposite way, but I said come in favor first.
I apologize.
Thank you. And also, please fill out a witness form and leave it at the desk there. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Shannon Cooper this morning representing the City of Kansas City as well as the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. We just want to go on record in support of this legislation. Thank Senator Razer for it. As he opened the bill, this issue's been around a long, long time, and the city as well as the chamber have consistently supported the idea that everyone should be treated equally. And as we struggle in the Kansas City region to attract employees to our community, we think legislation like this helps us as a community send a message out to prospective employees, employers, folks that want to relocate, that Kansas City is a very welcoming community. Other states have this language, they have this law in place. It hasn't created any of the horrific examples that you might hear today. All we're saying is let's treat everybody equally. This does not prevent anybody from firing a bad employee, does not prevent anybody from not leasing an apartment to a bad renter. It just says everybody will start out at a level playing ground. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You mentioned that other states have this. Do you know how many, or Senator Razer, do you know how many other states have this?
The last I checked, and I'm sure we have some witnesses behind here who can have a better update, but it was roughly half.
Half, okay. Any questions? Senator Serpoy, go ahead.
Thank you. I didn't really plan on saying anything, but just what concerns me about this is not the issue itself, because I think the need for this bill is long past. Because I mean, I worked for AT&T before I retired. They were very friendly towards this. I think most companies are now. Apple, first, second, or third largest company on the planet, is run by a gay man. So I think those days are long behind us. And that's what concerns me is making this, if a person is fired, and especially if you're a small employer, and then they say, well, you fired me because I was gay. And in fact, it can be very difficult to prove that, just like anything else. And that's what concerns me. I think the days where this is needed are long gone. I think they were here at one time, but I think the world has changed completely on the issues of sexuality. And it just concerns me of giving smart trial lawyers, employment lawyers, another avenue to challenge without merit sometimes, just like we've done on other things. If you remember, we changed the standard from contributing factor to a motivating factor in employment discrimination a few years ago. And that's what concerns me, is just giving a small business who fires an employee that he needs to fire, then claims he fired him because he's gay. You will win the suit, but it's going to cost you a lot of money to win that suit. That's what concerns me. So I guess what I'm saying is I think the need for this is probably much, much less than it was 20 years ago. And the cost of it potentially to small employers particularly worry me. So that's
Senator, if
not much of a question as a comment. Sorry.
Okay, then I won't respond other than, I don't think the chamber would be in support of this if our members, large and small employers alike, thought that this put us in a position to where we were going to get sued. And I think all of you know, in today's environment, as an employer makes that tough decision to terminate an individual, they've done their due diligence and they've recorded the reasoning why they let that individual go. And I think they do that probably to protect themselves from just what you discussed, to make sure that they are in the right letting that individual go. So, thank you.
Just to ease your concerns, Senator, the human rights statute, if you're an employer with 5 or fewer employees, this does not apply to you. So the very small businesses, it just simply doesn't apply. And last night I was going through some old files, kind of collecting things and putting them together, and I ran across an audio file. And it was the speech I gave after the LGBT history exhibit was removed from the building. And I asked the question at the end of that very question you asked, is this still something that we need to do? And the answer is yes. Former representative had some friends in a mid-sized town who couldn't find a place to live because they were a lesbian couple. This was someone on your side of the aisle that you would know very well, and it kind of woke him up. But I asked the question, those folks that were adamant that my history be taken out of this building, you really think they're going to hire me or give me a place to live? They evicted me from this building. And so I think it was pretty good proof that it actually does still happen, sadly enough.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anybody against, please come forward.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Rabbi Zev Smason. I'm from St. Louis. I drove in with a little bit of traffic today. I represent the Coalition for Jewish Values Missouri. I'm the chairman of the chapter as well as the Midwest Regional Vice President of the national organization. We represent 2,500 Orthodox rabbis in matters of public policy, as well as hundreds of thousands of traditional Jews nationwide, as well as a significant segment of the Jewish community and I believe Missouri citizens in the state of Missouri. I'm here to testify in opposition to the bill. I think a question that's interesting to raise in looking at the summary of the bill is that it seeks to prohibit discrimination. And to listen to the current national debate on the topic, it would appear that discrimination would always be wrong. But discrimination is not always wrong. But I believe that discrimination is like fire. In some contexts, it kills, but in other contexts, it gives heat and sustains life. For example, we discriminate in favor of our own children, and that's something that's positive. I oppose this bill because although the current bill summary begins by stating the act prohibits discrimination based upon sexual orientation or gender identity, I'd like to posit to the committee that if passed, this bill would actually impose harmful discrimination against the citizens of Missouri. In looking at the bill, which I printed out, the definition of sexual orientation is to read or to paraphrase, you can find it in paragraph 20 on line 166, one's actual or perceived emotional or physical attraction to a romantic or physical relationship with members of the same gender. And it goes on to say the terms of sexual orientation include a history of such attraction, a relationship, and is subject to self-definition. So that means then that according to this bill, a biological man with complete evident male genitalia could be defined, if he so chooses, for any one of a variety of reasons, to be a female. And the same is true for a biological female woman with evident female characteristics and genitalia. So if she would so choose for a variety of reasons, she could claim to be a male. That means that I, as a man, could say that I'm a woman, and my wife and my 9 children and my 17 grandchildren would be quite surprised if they heard that. The concern in the application of this definition is that the bill states that discrimination is prohibited in places of public accommodation. So public accommodation, which can be found in page 16 in its definition, paragraph 16 in its definition, includes places, all places of businesses that offer goods, services, privileges, facilities, recreation, and amusement. So what that means then is that I, as a man, and my wife is a woman, and others who identify in a binary sense and are concerned about our children, are in danger based upon the consideration of passage of this bill of being exposed in places of public accommodation, such as public bathrooms, showers, locker rooms, and public swimming facilities, health clubs, schools. In other words, for our daughters to be forced to undress, see, and shower with biological men, and the opposite. And I believe that I speak for the majority of the citizens of our state in saying that I don't want biological men who simply define themselves as women, for example, living and sleeping together with women in homeless shelters. And perhaps the bill allows these self-defined women who are biological men to be incarcerated in prisons with women, which have happened across the country and has created terrible problems, including violence. So, to summarize, I believe that if passed, this bill legislates a breach of commonly accepted standards of modest decency with which we raise our children and with which we seek to promote in society. It discriminates against parents and children who don't want themselves or their children to see the private parts of members of the opposite sex, and forcing them in some situations to do so. And it also raises the possibility of abuse. SB787 claims to prohibit discrimination, but in application, it will discriminate based upon unaccepted and unacceptable definitions of gender identity and what we believe to be the definitions of men and women. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody in favor, please come forward.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Cassie Brown. I'm the Executive Director of the National Association of Social Workers Missouri chapter. Social workers are the largest behavioral health workforce in Missouri. I also have a letter signed by the Missouri Psychological Association, the Missouri Mental Health Counselors Association also, in support of the bill. I've included copies with my witness form. We want to thank Senator Razer for bringing forward, again, a reasonable bill that would put Missouri in line with over half of our nation that already by law or explicit interpretation protect their LGBTQ plus citizens from discrimination simply in housing, hiring, and public accommodations. People want to feel safe in their state. Discrimination, the threat of discrimination harms the health and mental health of Missourians. According to the Williams Institute, more than twice as many LGBTQ plus Missourians are unemployed compared to their compared to cisgender and heterosexual counterparts. More than twice are uninsured, more than twice are food insecure, and have lower incomes. These are actual physical health and mental health impacts. This goes across the board, across races, across genders, across ages. You have to remember that many of these people are raising children. Many of them are unmarried, caring for themselves. These are people who deserve good, decent lives. When I moved back to Missouri a little over 2 years ago, I came back because I wanted this state to be better than it was when I left it in 1998. When I left it in 1998, people I knew, people like me, were afraid of these kinds of things, of being unemployed and unemployable, of losing housing, of not being able to find housing. I came back because I wanted this state to be better. And Senator Razer, whenever he said this bill has been introduced 25 times, tears came to my eyes. I want my state to be better. Whenever the good senator said that perhaps this bill's time is past, I can tell you it has not. I don't work for an Apple. I'm fortunate to work for a national organization that cares and has an ethics that values the most vulnerable of our citizens. And I tell you, LGBTQ plus citizens are vulnerable. Whenever we walk the streets, we fear because of how we look or because how we are feared to look. The prior person who came forward for testimony said that, well, he is afraid for certain people. I am afraid for myself. I am afraid for people like me. And he said perception. The bill includes the perception of being gay, lesbian, transgender. You don't have to be a certain way to be denied housing. You don't have to be any particular sexual orientation or gender identity. You just have to be perceived at this time to be different. This bill protects people. Perhaps you know someone who looks a little different, who behaves a little differently, and it has nothing to do with who they are, who they love. But this bill would protect them as well. People just want to feel safe, and this issue impacts all people. It is a workforce issue. It's an issue that college students look at when considering whether or not to study at Missouri's good colleges and universities. And professionals, individuals, and families consider this when looking at whether to stay or leave, to come and share their skills in Missouri or to share them elsewhere. This is an issue that impacts all of us, not some of us. Families break up because their children don't feel that they can stay and remain in a state where their ability to participate in public life is not protected. People leave, and only some of us will come back. Because of that, I encourage you, I beg you, to support SB787. For these reasons and more, NASW Missouri, social workers, and people like me urge you to vote yes on this bill. I thank you and sit ready for your questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Senator Sherpoy, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're talking about income, and I just did a quick kind of a cursory search on income, and same-sex couples their income is substantially higher than heterosexual couples. And the same thing amongst gay employees. Their income is higher than straight employees, at least when a quick search on it. I just Googled it quickly. So, I mean, usually historically with minority groups, average income across the population has been used as one of the things showing that they actually are suffering something. But when you do that with our gay citizens, that doesn't seem to hold true because they actually are doing better on average than the non-gay population.
According to the Williams Institute's most recent data, that is not true.
Well, I looked at the census. The Census Bureau's got information.
That also looks explicitly at people who are employed. It does not include those who are unemployed. It looks at those who are married, not those who are unmarried. It looks at those who are not raising children versus those who are raising children. It does not, that data is not primarily accurate according to the most recent survey.
When we look at stuff for minorities, I mean, those are the type of numbers usually they use to reinforce their case.
Respectfully, I apologize.
Pardon me?
I said respectfully. I did not mean to argue.
No, I don't mind. I don't. I'm in politics. I argue all the time, so it's not a problem.
Thank you.
But I guess I'm just trying to think through this, and it seems to me that usually those facts across the population are used to reinforce one side or the other, and in this case, they seem to be kind of ignored. So anyway, thank you.
It seems what? I'm sorry.
Kind of ignored that in this country, it looks like gay people economically are doing pretty good, I guess.
My data disagrees, but thank you for sharing yours.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
I appreciate it.
Anybody against, please come forward.
Okay, we'll try this again. Thank you, Senator Bernstetter and committee, for allowing me to be here this morning. I'm here today my name is Timothy Faber. I'm here today to strongly oppose Senate Bill 787. This bill is unacceptable in so many ways. I am left-handed. I have suffered numerous times in my life because I live in a right-handed world. Everything from businesses who only unlock the right-hand door so that when you try to open it, it doesn't open on the left. Banks putting the pin on the right-hand side and it won't reach over here for a left-handed person to write with. There's all kinds of discrimination against left-handed people. But I do not demand that left-handed people be included in the non-discrimination law. Every one of us has experienced inconveniences at some time or another. And forcing an artificial acceptance is not only illegal and unconstitutional, it creates more animosity and bitterness towards those who are demanding that acceptance. The United States Constitution and the Missouri State Constitution both guarantee the freedom of religion and the freedom of speech. But this bill sets up a host of conflicts against such freedoms. Perhaps you've heard of Jack Phillips from Colorado, who has been repeatedly sued by the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. The first case went all the way to the Supreme Court, where he won. The second case was also settled in his favor. Also out of Colorado is the case of 303 Creative regarding the freedom of speech in regard to gay and transgender and sexual orientation issues. And the U.S. Supreme Court again ruled in favor of free speech and against the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. You see, constitutional rights supersede statutory rights. Along with constitutional rights is the right to religious liberty. Government shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise of religion. But this bill would create the opportunity for a person to sue a church-run school, a church-run camp, or any other religious entity because of a presumed or assumed discrimination. Again, the Constitution is clear, and religious freedom and freedom of speech always take precedence. But this bill does not even attempt to carve out any religious or free speech designations. As I've already mentioned, if this bill is passed, there will be an increase in lawsuits and in the caseload for the Missouri Commission on Human Rights. This will create an even greater backlog for cases of the MCHR staff and more expenses for the citizens of Missouri to defend a case that will ultimately be lost. The fiscal notes put this expense at $150,000 per year or more, and that's without cases going all the way to the Supreme Court. That's just to handle day to day. Might I remind you that the oath of office for the Missouri Commission on Human Rights is, I, so-and-so, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Missouri, and that I will faithfully demean myself in the office of Commissioner of the Missouri Commission on Human Rights. Since that is the oath of a commissioner, do you think that they would direct their staff to do something contrary to the Constitution? Third, sexual orientation and gender identity are often fluid. 85% of those who experience sexual orientation or gender identity issues as children and adolescents return to their biological sex by their mid-20s, when freely left with the opportunity to do so. Thus, sexual orientation and gender identity may be an issue at one time and not at another time for the same individual. Reports from both California and Indiana indicate that children have been taken from their parents because the parents refuse to use the child's chosen pronouns. Children are not taken from their parents because of racial issues or because of religion, and certainly not because of age. But apparently, at least in some places, children can be removed from the home because of a presumed discrimination regarding sexual orientation or gender identity. Do not let Missouri become one of those places. Finally, this problem is compounded by the wording of this bill. On page 3, line 51, are the words presumed or assumed. Thus, the bill is not dealing with reality, it is dealing with presumptions and assumptions. Who is going to determine the presumption or assumption of another? Is it the one who has allegedly been discriminated against? Or is it the one who allegedly did the discriminating? I contend that no one can presume or assume to know the thoughts of another without clear and compelling evidence, not simply a presumption or assumption. Additionally, lines 55 and 56 go on to state, regardless of whether the presumption or assumption as to such characteristic is correct. So, a person can file a complaint of discrimination even if someone else's presumption or assumption is incorrect? What kind of justice is that? Then, on page 6, beginning of Section 20, lines 166 and 67, state, one's actual or perceived emotional or physical attraction. Again, how can a perceived attraction be adjudicated? Because of these issues and how the bill itself is written, it would be nearly impossible to enforce, and the rare occasions where it might be able to be enforced will cost the state untold sums of money to defend. So again, I strongly encourage you to vote no on this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Senator Beck, go ahead.
Yep. So, good morning, Mr. Faber.
Morning.
I think you were here last year, and
Yes, sir.
you testified pretty much the same as you just did today. I didn't hear who you represented today.
I'm here as an individual, sir.
So you're here as an individual. Who were you here as of last year? Who did you represent last year?
I was here last year on behalf of the Missouri Baptist Convention.
Oh, okay. What was your other position you had last year when you testified before this committee?
Well, I am the Director of Missions for the Lake of the Ozarks Baptist Association.
And what other positions did you have when you represented yourself
As far as
last
paid
year?
positions?
Yeah.
None.
None. You weren't on the Human Rights Commission?
That is not a paid position.
Were you on the Human Rights Commission last year when you came and testified before us and did not tell us that?
I did not tell you last year that I was a grandfather. I did not tell you last year that I was left-handed.
That's not pertinent to this question. Were you the chairman of the Human Rights Commission last year when you came and testified?
Yes, but that's not a paid position.
Were you removed from the Human Rights Commission because you misrepresented yourself here in this Senate? Yes, you were, sir.
No, I wasn't.
You were removed from the Human Rights
I was
Commission.
not removed from the Human Rights
I don't know how
Commission.
we can believe anything you say, for one thing, because you misrepresented yourself last year. I asked you to cease and desist. You put a bunch of nonsense out there, and now you're coming back here and you're lying about what you said last year. You misrepresented yourself. You should be ashamed of what you're all about, and to take away rights from other people, just to have a house, to have housing like you have the privilege to have, and to come here and misrepresent yourself and then lie about what you did last year, that you were removed because of those
Sir?
things of double
I
dipping
was-
and misrepresenting yourself in this chamber and in the lower chamber.
Sir,
Thanks.
I was not removed from the Human Rights Commission for any reason other than in December, I chose, for personal reasons.
You were
to not-
removed. Thank you.
There's no record of that, and you cannot prove that. Your accusation is incorrect, sir.
Any
I
other
was not
questions
removed.
any other questions of this witness? Seeing none, thank you. As I mentioned when we started, we only have this room till 9:30, so please be as brief as possible. Somebody in favor, please come forward.
Hello.
Hello.
I am here as a citizen, as a lifelong Missourian. I'm born and raised here. I've lived in all across the state. And I'm here as a parent. I'm here as...
Can you let us know who you are?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My name... No. My name is Mindy Carney, and I drove in from St. Louis this morning. I am also a left-handed Missourian, and I would like to explain to the previous speaker the difference between being inconvenienced and suffering. It's a big difference. I had to learn how to use scissors with my right hand, but I don't think that's the same thing as not being able to have a job or have housing or to be told that you shouldn't exist, as some people will do. When I was first married, my husband and I traveled to China twice and adopted 2 little girls who were infants at the time. They grew up in Missouri. They went to college in Missouri. They are successful, amazing, incredible people. My oldest daughter lives in New York State. She has a wife. She's a labor and delivery nurse. Her wife is a PhD candidate. They are amazing people. I want them to come home. They can't. They're talking about starting a family, and I'll be honest, being a grandma, being a Mimi is like the top of my bucket list. And I won't be where they are when that happens, because they can't come back to Missouri. they won't. I mean, they don't feel safe. They don't feel protected. They can't do it. And I feel like people like the man who spoke before, like the rabbi, like the religious community who try to use these scare tactics of transgender people going into locker rooms and flailing their private parts about in front of people. That doesn't happen in real life. That doesn't happen. There are pedophiles out there. There are horrible people out there. But I know real transgender people in real life. One of the little girls who came back from China in the group of adoptive families that we had the first time is a young man. And he was adopted into an extremely religious family. They both worked for the Archdiocese. They don't live in Missouri. But his mother has since passed away. And so I speak for their family when I can. Those parents were gobsmacked, dumbfounded, and terrified when they first learned this from their son. And instead of rejecting him, instead of telling him that he's going through a phase, instead of doing all of that, they educated themselves. And they supported him in face of a community that was not interested in supporting that way. And he went off to college. He's successful. He's doing well. My daughter and her wife are wonderful people. They would be a huge asset to our state. One of them is a coder and a PhD candidate. My daughter is a labor and delivery nurse. Her goal is to become a nurse practitioner and offer services in underserved areas. Missouri has a lot of those because a lot of rural hospitals have closed, as well as inner city places and places where women really need someone like that. But in good conscience, I can't encourage them to come back to the state where I was born and raised. It breaks my heart. And I urge you, first of all, it boggles the mind that 25 times this has failed. It also boggles the mind that anyone has anyone else's human rights in their fist to vote on. That's wrong. My daughter deserves better. They all deserve better. And
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Seeing none, thank you. Somebody against, please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ray McCarty, President of Associated Industries in Missouri, and I want to be very clear about our opposition to this. We want to be very respectful to the people who are in this community. We believe that, there are a couple of things that should be considered. First of all, the U.S. Supreme Court has already decided that sex discrimination includes sexual orientation and gender identity. That decision applies to employers that have more than 15 employees and are subject to the Federal Human Rights Act. So what this bill would actually target are the employers, as you heard, that have more than 5 but less than 15 employees, which, by most of their admission, are less sophisticated and have, maybe less training than they should in employment statistics. But I think our position was very well stated by Senator Searpoy. Our concern is not with the senator or the people who cared enough to come to testify in a legislative proceeding gaming the system. Obviously not. Our problem is with people that will use this as a tool to file lawsuits against employers that may not even be in the community because of the fact that sexual orientation and gender identity is defined as a perception, one's own perception of themselves. And because of that, it's very difficult to defend yourself if someone makes that claim in an employment dispute. And so that is our opposition to it, but we want to be very respectful about it. We also have encouraged, we have a policy in our policy manual, and we encourage employers to have policies that remove discrimination of all types, including sexual orientation and gender identity. And we think that most have done that. Most of those who are more than 15 employers, they have to. But then today's employment situation would dictate that most people will be eligible for employment regardless of anything that's going on right now, because we're trying to find as many employees as we can to fill jobs. And so we want to be very respectful and very clear about our opposition. It's not that we want to say that discrimination is correct at all. It's just that you're targeting a group of employers that have more than 5, and up to 15 employees.
Thank you for your testimony and questions. Seeing none, thank you. Anybody in favor, please come forward.
All right, good morning, committee. Thanks for letting us be here today. My name is Amelia Stauffer. I'm a resident of District 30 in Springfield, Missouri, as well as being a Master of Social Work student at Missouri State University. I sit here in support of Senate Bill 787. Please consider that when it comes to the hierarchy of human needs, physiological safety is considered the most basic need according to Maslow. When people don't have the necessary protection to meet those needs, they live in fear, which significantly reduces the quality of life. A study by the Williams Institute at UCLA in 2020 states that 17% of cisgender and genderqueer sexual minorities experience homelessness within their lifetime, which is twice that of another study of the general population. As a human myself who has personally experienced homelessness as a result of drug use perpetuated by negative mental health outcomes from experiencing discrimination as a member of the LGBTQ+ community, I strongly advocate for the implementation of protections that would give my community peace of mind. I myself have sat in fear that I would be found out as a transhuman in housing situations. I would have felt a lot safer knowing that the government had my back. Implement this bill so that all Missourians can feel safe. Matthew 14:12-14 calls us to invite the poor in and serve them. I ask you to do the same. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Seeing none, thank you. Against, please come forward.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Bev Allen with Liberty Link, Missouri. Just wanting to go on record against 787 because of the threat to religious liberty and the freedom of speech and freedom of conscience for healthcare workers and others. So, and then I also am leaving copies for each member from ADF. A friend of mine works there, and they have a legal opinion on 787. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, thank you. In favor, please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Sam Licklider for Missouri Realtors. We support the bill. It's a question of fairness. It's a question of economic development. Tim Cook was mentioned earlier. I doubt very much if he's going to allow any Apple installations in this state. I'm surprised we've got an Apple store, frankly, when discrimination is available. I was sitting there and hearkening back to when I sat through the original Human Rights Commission debate. Same players are here. I mean, not the same people, with the exception of me. Well, most people are smart enough to get the hell out of here. And the same arguments were made. You would have thought it was going to be the absolute end of the world. Well, it hasn't been. As a matter of fact, the economy is in pretty decent shape, and people get along. It's not going to be the end of the world if you pass this. It's going to be a very good thing, although given the time we have available, the chances of it passing this year are relatively slender. Again, we support it. We think it's a good idea. It's not going to be the end of the world.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Seeing none, thank you. In opposition, please come forward. And in favor, please come forward.
Good morning. I'm L.A. Dupre. I'm a teacher. Since 1990, I've lived in St. Louis County, where I have built my career, my family, almost my whole adult life. alongside my husband, who's also a teacher. Together, we have 2 Missouri-born children who love their home state. I love Missouri beauty. That's what our younger child said in high school after a weekend cutting trails in the Ozarks for a service trip. Now a 22-year-old college graduate, that child currently works as a direct support provider in a residential setting for adult Missourians with intellectual or developmental disabilities. Some would call this God's work, attending to the basic needs, the most basic needs of overlooked people whose capacities are limited, helping them live lives that are safe and dignified. My child who does this care work is also trans. They're small in stature, smaller than I am, and vast in heart, vaster than I am. In their first ever post-college performance review at work, their manager described them as one of the kindest people working in the organization. As a mother, I was pleased and proud, but not surprised. My child's compassion and attention to the rights and care of others is a wonder. They are building a skill set that will continue to help them do compassionate work in the world. But their most immediate plan is to leave this state. This body, the Missouri legislature, has loudly put a target on my child's health care access as a trans person. My child cares for Missourians in need, but Missouri does not protect my child's basic rights. My child plans My child plans to move to a state that will, no later than the end of the summer, and with deep sadness, I fully support that goal. I want my child's rights and protections to be safe too, and the actions and words of this body have told our family that neither of our children will be guaranteed human rights here. Our kids are part of a resultant brain drain and heart drain. But you can begin to turn that tide in this state today. You can choose to send my child and so many other Missourians and prospective Missourians as well the simple message that their basic human rights to things like housing and employment are matter and are protected. One more note, a young teacher I've mentored closely for 2 years, incredibly talented, is moving away from Missouri for her first post-training job because, as she says, she feels the grounds of her rights falling away beneath her. So she'll be in Minnesota next year. I said last year to this same group at this same hearing, and I hope that I won't have to say it again, Missouri needs Mona. My family needs Mona right now. We need it as a sign of good faith. We need it as a sign of hope. We need it as a promise of a Missouri where compassion wins and compassionate people are defended, where all citizens, including LGBTQ citizens, are protected, where all people who are of Missouri can keep on loving Missouri and know that Missouri will protect them from discrimination so they can work, live, and thrive here at home. Thanks for listening, and I'm ready for any questions you might have.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody else in favor, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Zaria Cheney. I am a law student at the University of Missouri, and I'm also a queer person. I want to start by just agreeing that with those before me, that this is incredibly overdue. It has been a decade since same-sex marriage has been legalized. It has been nearly a decade since same-sex marriage has been legalized. The majority of states have also recognized these protections through law. So has the Supreme Court in 2020. We are running behind. Nevertheless, LGBTQ families must exist day to day, knowing that their livelihoods, their homes, their jobs can be taken away from them at any moment. They cannot support themselves, and they cannot support their families if that happens. Last year, over 50 anti-LGBTQ bills were proposed in this state. This year, over 21 were pre-filed. The fact that there might be more cases brought to the Human Rights Commission because of this law is not a point against it, but proof that it is necessary. It should be clear that it is time for a law like this to be passed. As a student, I can also testify right now that it is in fact incredibly hard to get a job, especially a first job, if you are queer or even if you're not. No matter what your views in the community, no one deserves to have their livelihoods taken away from them at any moment, purely because of who they are. It is truly that simple. What Representative Razer said at the beginning is right. We are just better than this. I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Questions? Seeing none. Anybody else in favor, please come forward.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Megan Whisker, and I'm a professional civil engineer. I wanted to bring it to the attention as someone who the law does affect, and evidence that it has affected me. To begin, I want to let you know that I got my civil engineering degree at the University of Missouri. I got licensed through the Missouri system of testing, and I was in the consulting engineering field for 49 years. Okay. I did my work with diligence and accuracy and the best of my ability as an engineer. And about 35 years into my career, well, I want to add that along this time, the whole 35 years, I had been keeping a secret within myself, because I made it that far as a man that I was born a man, and along about the 35th year of my career, I was in the process of transitioning, because I knew within myself I was identified as a woman, been keeping it as a secret all that part of my life. And during my transition, my then employer found out that I was transgender, and I was in the process of transitioning. They called me into the office, and during the discussion, one of the first things they said was, "We've discovered something troubling, and we've determined that you do not represent the values that belong to our firm, and we're going to have to let you go." Okay, that was I was really depressed, probably unemployed for close to a year. I finally went back into hiding, so that I could identify myself as a man again, and get another engineering job. I did get another engineering job, and this issue, I was faced with this again, because in order to proceed with my transition, I needed to come out at work with great internal stress. I did decide that I'd just go ahead and accept the consequences, come out to my then current employer, and I was lucky that my then current employer was accepting and very understanding, and they said, of course you're valued here, and we will keep you on. So the senator to my right here mentioned that the law, as currently written, would allow employers to actually fire people that they discovered were had a different sexual orientation or gender identity, and I am proof that has happened, and it's happened actually more than anyone knows, because most of us that have been fired for this, do not come forward and testify. You know, they just go back into hiding and stay there. And who knows, some of them commit suicide because they can't find a job. So,
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
yeah, I ask you to
Any
please-
questions for this witness?
Okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. We only have a couple minutes left, so please be really brief. If in favor, please come forward.
Chairman, committee members who remain, thank you for being here. I appreciate you staying. There's a lot of folks who traveled to really bravely testify. My name is Katie Erker-Lynch. I'm the executive director of Promo and Promo Fund. This bill has been filed since 1998 and has enjoyed not only bipartisan support, but has been filed by folks on both sides of the aisle. A couple of things that I want to share that came up. 31 states across the country enjoy these protections. I think it's an absolute shame that Missourians have to come here and say, please protect me. Please make it so that I can't be discriminated against. Yet, year after year, we've done that. And I want to thank the brave folks who have come to do it. Last October in 2023, the FBI released the results from the hate crimes data that they had from 2022. And there's a lot that I could share, but what I want to share is that as we've seen a rise in anti-LGBTQ plus legislation that has been filed, we've also seen a 13.8% increase in reports of hate crimes based on sexual orientation. And shockingly, this should be shocking, a 33% jump in reported hate crimes based on gender identity. When we allow discussion to occur that says people don't need to be protected, we allow people to be harassed, we allow people to bully kids, we allow people to be discriminated against, and there are real repercussions. So I'm very grateful, Chairman, that you heard this bill. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Seeing none. Anybody else in favor?
Chair, members of the committee, Jessica Petrie here on behalf of BJC Healthcare. As an employer and healthcare institution, want to go on record in support.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else in favor?
Otto Fajan on behalf of Missouri NEA. Again, we continue to support this bill. We think this reflects where Missouri is, at least at its heart, but not in its law. I'll just point out, we're going to continue to lose talented people from this state if we don't change this law. One of those talented people is one of our kids who happens to be a high school senior, captain of Columbia Hickman's national champion ethics bowl team, a National Merit Scholar, and also a young person who's very clear they don't intend to be in this state if the law doesn't support their rights. That's just an example of the many of folks who this state is going to continue to lose. We think this is a move in the right direction, and happy to answer questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Anybody
Chairman.
else in favor?
Good morning, David Lee Brush with the Missouri Equity Education Partnership Action, and we are here to support this bill because it strengthens equity and inclusion for all Missourians in public spaces. I'd like to note that one of the people that is probably going to lead the state is a young man I adore, my nephew, and he deserves to be treated with kindness. And also, this bill is old enough to now teach third grade because it's the same age as my son, who teaches third grade in Cincinnati. So it's time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Seeing none. Anybody else in favor?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Jay Hardenbrook. I'm the Advocacy Director for AARP in the state of Missouri. There have been some well-publicized issues with housing, especially around older LGBTQ members of our state. People should be allowed to live in the places where they want to live, which is why we work on issues like property tax reform and utilities issues. And we know that we have members of our community that are being denied housing solely based on their sexual orientation. And that is a concern to us. We would very much support this legislation
Thank
being
you.
passed. And
Any questions? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Anybody else in favor? Please come forward.
Good morning, Jackie Barget, registered lobbyist on behalf of the City of St. Louis, and we would also like to go on record in support. I will just echo the comments that Mr. Cooper mentioned earlier. We want to make sure that the City of St. Louis remains a very welcoming place for everyone, regardless of how they identify, to both live and work. And we want to give a very big thank you to Senator Razer for continuing to introduce and fight.
Are you sure you want to echo Cooper's statements?
Don't tell him I said that.
All right. Questions? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody else in favor?
Good morning, Chairman, committee members. My name is Sage Coram. I'm the Legislative Associate with the American Civil Liberties of Missouri. And on behalf of the ACLU of Missouri and our approximately 15,000 members statewide, we would like to express our strong support for SB787 and the reintroduction of MONA. Echo a lot of the comments. We know why this is needed. We know that it is long overdue. And the ACLU of Missouri is committed to ensuring that LGBTQ folks can live openly without discrimination, enjoy equal rights, personal autonomy, and freedoms of expression and association. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none. The other committee members are coming in, so we just have a couple more? One more? One more. Okay. Please come forward.
Hello. Good morning. Thank you for taking the time to hear from us this morning on this very important bill. My name is Jasmine Williams. I'm here today as the Black Organizing Program Lead for Planned Parenthood of the St. Louis region and Southwest Missouri. And I am speaking in favor of SB 787, the Missouri Non-Discrimination Act. I'm going to make it really, really quick. This is a good bill for Missouri. So I'm like, this is a good bill for Missouri. I know you guys don't have very limited time, so I'm going to let someone else with a better story.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? All right, is that it? Anybody for informational purposes only? All right, Senator Razer, you have any closing comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to talk really fast. There's just a few things I would like to point out. We heard Senator Sirpoy talked about LGBT folks are wealthier. I don't know if we're wealthier, perhaps a larger disposable income. I hope that you will vote and let me have that very soon. Freedom of conscience of healthcare workers. Freedom of conscience of healthcare workers, I have no idea what that means, but it does ring back to the 1980s when people wouldn't help those dying of HIV and AIDS. The Human Rights Commission has said in the past less than 100 of these cases, I want to say 48, but I can't prove that, but I had to go back and look at my records. Less than 100 cases would be brought forward. We can get married today, and we can come back from our honeymoon and not have a place to live or a job. We talked about the establishment of religion. I promise you, if a religious organization is using their money and discriminates, I support that. It's a religious organization, and they can do that. It's the separation of church and state. If they're using taxpayer dollars to do that, it's a different story. Comparing anybody in the human rights statute to right versus left-handed people is absolutely unbelievable. Abused by, alluded to, if we allow trans people to use the same locker room, that there would be abuse. That's disgusting. I would say that there's the same percentage of people in my community who would do something like that as in the straight community. And removing children from the home because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. There's a homeless shelter in my district who I visited this summer exclusively for LGBT kids kicked out of their homes. They had 148 kids under the age of 18 that they served last year and dozens that they couldn't take in. Mr. Chairman, this is bipartisan, and I am very proud as I leave this chamber. I've worked on this bill for over 20 years in one capacity or another, including working for Promo. The first two members of the Republican Party that ever co-sponsored this bill, I recruited and got them to co-sponsor the bill. This was the first bill that I brought before a committee when I came here as a member of the House, and it's going to be the last bill that I present as a member of the Senate, and 25 years is long enough. This is long overdue. So I appreciate the opportunity that you've given me today, and I hope we get this done finally.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
I move we adjourn. Everybody, thank everybody for coming and testifying. I move we adjourn. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second. All those in favor say aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.